Okay, there's a couple of things that are going on that you should know about. First of all, Russia has bombarded a Ukrainian military range near the Polish border, killing 35. Russia has also requested military and economic assistance from China. This is according to the U.S. That's really good. That's really good news. China and Russia are beginning to form their alliance. And in that alliance, North Korea and Iran, and I believe eventually Saudi Arabia, and maybe if we're really lucky, India. Pakistan will go that way, and you will have an Axis and allied power. I would bet that most of Africa goes their way as well. So now China has said, no, Russians calling us for help. We don't even know what you're talking about. We've never even heard of that. Also this weekend, Iran launched 12 missiles, and those 12 missiles landed all around a U.S. consulate. Now, the good news is the consulate wasn't damaged. Nobody was killed. But they launched 12 ballistic missiles against our consulate. And they said, well, hey, this is, some to do with those Jews. Darn those Jews. They sent their Mossad in and they killed a couple of people of ours. Okay, so what do we have to do with that? Why are you bombing the streets around the consulate and not killing anyone? I personally think this is yet another test of the United States. Can we do this while we're in nuclear negotiations with Iran? And will they still sit at the table? This is another test of our president, his resolve and what he's willing to take. So now let me get to the big news this weekend. We are edging closer and closer to a world war, and we're already in a world war when it comes to the dollar. This is really critical. This is one of those tripwires for me. I have been trying to come up with tripwires of when I say to my family, okay, all right, everybody in the car, we're going underground. What are the tripwires that I'm looking for? One of them is a spreading of this war. If this war starts to spread into other countries, that's a big tripwire for me that says we're now headed towards a World War III, and it's going to get serious. A serious attack on our power grid is another one, and a serious attack on the U.S. dollar. When you start to see China and Russia coming together and putting together an alternative to the petrodollar, you have a real problem. Now, this might take me a while to explain this, but I want to show you where we've been, what the dollar, why everybody has the world's reserve currency as the U.S. dollar, Bretton Woods, and then I want to tell you what happened this weekend because a major tripwire was crossed. So the petrodollar is why we have our dollar, our greenback, in the banks of almost every foreign country. In fact, I think every foreign country. If you want to buy oil, especially from OPEC, it must be purchased in U.S. dollars. Why do you think Hillary Clinton said, we came, we saw, we killed him? Remember that? She was laughing about the death of Gaddafi. We were involved in that death, absolutely. He was dragged in the streets by his own people, but we weakened him. Why did this happen? Why did the United States want Gaddafi out of there? We were all saying, this is destabilizing the Middle East. What are you doing? We did it because he said he was going to start taking euros for Libyan oil. Okay? No, you're not. No, you're not. We have a deal with OPEC in Saudi Arabia. You can sell oil. We'll provide you arms and everything else. And we'll buy your oil and we'll continue to buy your oil. but you only sell oil in U.S. dollars. So that means anytime a country wants to buy oil from OPEC, they have to take their dollar, buy U.S. dollars, buy the oil. Okay? So you can't buy oil outside of a U.S. dollar. That's why everybody has the U.S. dollar. It's oil makes the world go around. It's not gold, it's oil. So if somebody starts to come off of our dollar and starts buying oil with something else other than the U.S. dollar, we usually kill them, or we isolate them, or we depose them. We do something so that doesn't happen. Why? Because if these countries that hold all of these dollars, 80% of all printed money is overseas. So if the dollar, which is held in all of these central banks and all of these banks all over the world, if they start selling those dollars and those treasuries, all of that money rushes back here to the United States. What does that mean? Well, if 80% of our money is being held in banks and it starts to rush back here, it means out of control inflation. If you think inflation is bad, we're talking hyperinflation. It will mean a dollar collapse. It won't be worth anything. So we don't want to do anything that upsets the petrodollar thing. Yet, what happens to the petrodollar if we stop buying gas and oil and we tell the whole world you got to be green? Has anybody just thought of that? Even if you care about the planet and you think it's the most important thing and people should eat rocks and who cares if they live or die, you should care about the petrodollar. Is anyone pegging it to something else? Because we got off of gold. Now, one more thing you need to know, the history of how we got here. Bretton Woods happened right after, it's a town in, where is it? New Hampshire, I think, Bretton Woods. The whole world got together after World War II because we had all of the gold, because Europe needed to get all kinds of things, armaments and tanks and everything else. They didn't have any money, and so we were just like, you know what, send us your gold. Send us your gold, we'll send you the tanks and the airplanes and everything else. Just send us your gold. So we had all of the gold for the whole world in Fort Knox. That's why we said, we'll be the gold standard. We'll never break the gold standard. You just take our money. You can buy oil with it. It's the only currency you can buy oil with, and we're on the gold standard. 1972 comes along, and that's when Bretton Woods II happens. And that's when the United States says, by the way, you know what? We want war and the Great Society, so we're coming off of the dollar standard or the gold standard, but we'll never, ever really abuse it. And here's the good news. We're going to become consumers. Right now, we've made refrigerators and televisions and cars and everything else that the world is buying. But now, because we want the war and we want a great society, we're going to come off that. And we're going to now stop making those things, ship our jobs overseas, and we'll buy your products. So we'll become a consumer nation, and you'll be able to get rich. Just hang on to our dollar. That's Bretton Woods 2. We are now approaching Bretton Woods 3, and the world will change as much as it did in World War II. This is something that unless you lived through World War II, you have not seen anything like what is coming. Here's what happened over the weekend. Well, let me take 1 minute and then I'll come back and tell you what happened over the weekend. It's a tripwire, at least for me. All right. Zoltan Pozsar, he is, I don't know how to say his name. It's Pozsar or Pozsar. He is one of Wall Street's most respected people. He's at Credit Suisse in Switzerland and has worked for Wall Street banks for a very, very long time. He is a guy, when he speaks, people start to listen. Well, I've been watching him lately and really listening to what he's saying, because he's the only one that's really kind of warning of things, I think, with real credibility. This is what happened this weekend. China's central bank is uniquely placed to backstop a global commodities crisis sparked by sanctions imposed in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, potentially paving the way for a much stronger yuan. In a note published on Monday, Zoltan Pozsar, global head of the bank's short-term interest rate strategy, said the unfolding crisis in Ukraine could lead to a perfect storm in which commodities could weaken the euro-dollar system, contribute to inflation in Western economies, and threaten financial stability. Now listen to this. This crisis that we're facing now, quoting, is unlike anything we have seen since President Nixon took the U.S. dollar off of gold in 1971, and it was the end of the era of commodity-based money. When the crisis and war is over, the U.S. dollar will be much weaker and the Chinese dollar much stronger because it will be based on a basket of commodities. Russia's invasion, the biggest attack on European states since World War II, has created 1.7 million refugees, fear of a wider conflict in the West, and led to a raft of sanctions on Moscow. The conflict has driven surges in global commodity prices, pushing nickel prices to a record high and oil to a 14-year peak. Russia has warned a ban on Russian oil imports could jolt the cost of a barrel to $300. Listen to this. Russian commodities today are like subprime collateralized debt obligations. Anybody who was had any kind of money at all in 2008, when I say CDOs, your blood runs cold, because that's what the real problem was, where every bank needed to be bailed out. So Russian commodities today are like subprime collateralized debt obligations were in 2008. Conversely, non-Russian commodities are like U.S. Treasury securities were back in 2008, one collapsing in price and the other surging in price, with margin calls on both sides, regardless which side you are on. Western central banks, held back by sanctions imposed by their own governments, will not be able to provide support such as emergency liquidity needed to close the market gaps. So here's what's happening. In a nutshell, a replay of 2008. So here's the problem. China started selling our treasuries. Okay, those are our loans. Those are held in dollars, trillions of dollars. They started selling our treasuries to fund vessel leasing and the purchase of cheap Russian commodities. They're trying to control inflation in China, which is also leading to commodity sources. So what they're doing is they're buying gold, they're buying oil, they're buying all these commodities, wheat, anything they can buy. They're buying real stuff. And they're buying it from Russia, which will prop Russia up. But they're also now introducing their digital dollar that is going to compete against our petrodollar, and they will have something that is backed by something real, which we don't have. This is what is happening, and you would think, well, what's going to cause people to switch over to the dollar? Well, this is what's going to get everybody to switch over the dollar. The freezing of Russia's currency reserves. Here's the big question that big people are asking. Wait a minute. Is money really money? Is cash really cash? If I put my money in a central bank or I put my money in these big banks, it's supposed to be safe. But if any country can just say, oh, you know what? you don't have a savings account anymore. Oh, you know what? You can't do banking services anymore. They're asking themselves, is money even worth money? Now, this should make cryptocurrency go through the roof because it's decentralized. No one is able to stop it. So that should make everything go up through the roof. But China has banned cryptocurrency because they want their own cryptocurrency. And the United States is trying to ban cryptocurrency because they want their own cryptocurrency. You're going to see China, Russia, India, Pakistan, maybe Saudi Arabia, and other countries start to sell their dollars, sell their treasuries, sell their reserves, start buying commodities through China and Russia and using the digital dollar from China. That will mean higher inflation here and a dollar that are we backing it on anything? Could we back it up on our oil reserves? Anything real? And if so, this should tell you something about the Great Reset. Oh, they'd never take our bank account. Really? Because that's what countries are saying now about the Western sanctions. Wait a minute. Can they just take my money too? Can they just shut me down? If countries are asking it, you should ask it.